On this episode of A State of Control, we talk about how software can provide solutions that hardware may not be able to. With the hardware back orders that some people are facing, most of the industry, in fact, software can be that key to success. All that and more on A State of Control.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
A State of Control.
A State of Control, episode 86. Hero, not zero.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Peerless AV, driving technology through innovation.
Welcome to A State of Control, an AVNation podcast that highlights the control, programming, and automation aspects of the audiovisual industry. My name is Steve Greenblatt. I'm your host. Thanks for joining us today. On today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about the value that software provides as we move from more hardware-centric AV industry to the software and solutions side. And with me to discuss that are a couple of returning guests. And before I welcome them, I'd like to say hi to my partner here at A State of Control, none other than Rich Fregosa, or Uncle Richie as some know him. Hey, Rich, how are you?
Doing good. Mellow West Coast greetings. October 1st hits tomorrow, and my Super Bowl for Halloween is going to start. I get a stage delivery tomorrow, so looking forward to getting going.
Wow, and the Giants are playing well, so you got that going for you too.
Yeah, baseball here. I'm sure Mark's like, whatever. It's football season, so.
I'd like to start off by welcoming back a friend and somebody who hasn't been on the show in way too long, who's back in episode 73. He is Mark Lavecchia from BMA Software Solutions. Hey, Mark, how are you?
Very well. Thank you for having me back. I appreciate it. I didn't realize it's been that many episodes.
Yeah, time flies, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does. It's like we haven't anything to do. But thank you for having me back. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. And last but not least, he was last with us in episode 81. He is Scott Samsel from Greenpoint TDI. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for having me back.
You're welcome. Good to have you here. So we're sitting now in the latter parts of 2021, believe it or not, and just to provide some context, and we're trying to put the pandemic in our rearview mirror, but we're still working in a little bit of a tough situation where there's supply chain challenges, hardware is not as available as people would like, and it's having an impact on the AV industry, and the fact that software is not as dependent on any of those items other than time is an item that I think is often overlooked. So what I want to talk about today a little bit is how software can add more value and be either an alternative or a supplement to these hardware-based systems. And that's been a big part of the trend in the AV industry as we move more toward the software and services side, as I mentioned. So, Rich, we often have been asked as programmers software is considered a little bit of magic. So we've often been asked to make things happen. Maybe it's making a device do something more than it is meant to do on paper, or work around a challenge, or a piece of equipment that isn't working as intended. Right now, with the hardware situation as it is it time for programmers to shine and be able to kind of step in as the hero to be able to provide some solutions, because clients aren't going to wait forever to have their needs met?
Yeah, it's funny. Brought something up right before we started recording that kind of keyed into all of this, which was, as control systems programmers, without control systems, what do we do? And a lot of the control systems right now are hardware based. And so, it's not even a chicken and egg. It's like, if you don't have anything to program, what are you going to do with your time? And if it stretches out long enough, if you're an employee of a company or you're the owner of a company and you can bench and you can kind of pre-develop and do R&D and all of these things. But if all of a sudden you're getting from manufacturers 12, 16, 20 week delays that you're hearing about, product coming in, you got to start figuring something out quick. I do primarily resi, but I still do a decent amount of commercial. We just had this happen on a project where a DSP needed to go into the system, and it was unified communication system, and there was just no product. There was no way the product was going to be found, and a manufacturer had just announced like 3 days before that they were going to a virtual DSP that could work on the unified engine that we already had there. And so we had to scratch our heads and go, okay, we can't get parts. This just came out. These are our, we went from A through Y. Here's option Z. And it became a point of saying, okay, you have to be willing to operate in a software world. And we were talking just a little bit earlier and kind of wanted to bring up is that, a lot of things due to the pandemic has accelerated the virtualization of products. And there's always been the talk of virtualization of products in the control industry, but there hasn't been a whole lot of momentum. And honestly enough, I haven't seen as much demand as I thought I would. So software control system programmers, absolutely, it's a time to shine. And it's an opportunity for them to develop under fire at this point, because you have no hardware choices. You don't have the stock. You don't have the things that you're used to. So you are going to have to push out and start figuring out, what do we always say about control system programming, right? 20% of the time it does something. 80% of the time you're trying to keep it from breaking, or you're preparing for something breaks. Even more so in the virtual environment, because you are dealing with lots of things out of your control. Operating system changes, database changes, drivers. If all of a sudden somebody plugs in a USB keyboard into this device that corrupts something, you're at the mercy of that. Well, those are the things you need to start figuring out. And so I think that it hopefully pushes control systems programmers into considering more how the software world itself works and how we can better fit in it.
Scott, I'm going to let you jump in here because I think Rich touched on a few things that are probably near and dear to you. One was virtualization. Another thing was providing more outside of the box software solutions, getting more creative. And I know that that's some things that you've done, and I'm sure that you share some insight on that. But what do we have to do to get more people thinking along those lines?
Well, I think the between COVID and and since COVID is over, the construction cycle has picked back up, and then it not only picked back up, but it got slammed into a smaller window just from being delayed. And then you add on all the shipping challenges and labor challenges. I think a lot has changed in our industry in the past year. Becoming more, we're probably use this word, but becoming more brand agnostic is something we can't afford not to do anymore. As programmers, in this industry, we typically, picked a horse and rode it in a direction that the manufacturer is guiding us in. That's just not the world we live in anymore. And since everything we deal with is software, it might live on a hardware base of some sort, but it's still software that makes it work. The DSPs, the AV over IP, and what have you. So for a long time, becoming less dependent on brand and more dependent on the value add that the programmer can bring to a project is something that we've been concentrating on quite a bit. And it's coming to fruition. So at times like this, We can take something like our NVX manager, which is a completely standalone endeavor that was built for a Crestron AV over IP system. It's complete management configuration and control software, standalone using web services, and now switch out that with a different brand of hardware with no loss of time or energy on the back end. We're having to do that right this second on a personal level, not as far as being released to the public, but on a personal level for our projects internally to our company. We're having to do that right now as it stands because of some of the delay times in actual product to be able to do encoding and decoding at the hardware level and at the DSP level. So it's something that we've been working on for a while, and it actually is right now staring us in the face. We're also having to integrate control systems together like we've never done before, which becomes brand agnostic. So software becoming a gateway for everything, including control systems and different kinds of systems, is a value add that we've never really had before. We always talk about integration, but we're only integrating inside of the control system that we're talking about. Now we're integrating control systems together, and a lot of that is coming too because of the idea of a building not being able to buy a whole building of the same kind of a brand, or they're having different vendors. So we also have APIs open into our management software, and we're doing a current project where we're integrating Control 4, Crestron, and AMX into a singular product that all work the same. So everything I just mentioned is coming to fruition right now because of everything that we said. It's not because we designed it that way or have dreams of hybrid systems. It's because of the reality of the situation on hardware.
I would take that, Steve, if I can take that down a little bit of a side road, because what they're saying is 100% correct, and yet it's a little bit different than what we see. Because what we see on our model is straight up commercial integrators putting in technology systems, right? We're old school, basically. We do some end user work, but for all intents and purposes, and that's usually at the university level, we're dealing with the with the integrators who've sold a project. This project's got to go in. We need to get this room up and going. There's no hardware anyway. What are we going to do? And that challenge in and of itself is where I think controls programming gets to shine. And the reason we do that is because I've compared it to basically, my wonderful, loving wife saying, hey, guess what? So-and-so is coming over and we're going to have dinner. I don't have anything ready for dinner. What are you talking about? So now what I need to do is I need to figure out what I've got in the refrigerator and what I got in the shelves and what I can put together to make a meal based on what's in the house. And it may not be exactly what the chef would like to be putting together. But I need to take those components and get those things together because somebody's showing up and we need to make it work. And the ability to have that overriding sense of I can write code for all of these different products and bring them together for you is a value that somebody may not have thought through, because they call and they say, Mark, I got a problem. This room, I just had this happen, okay? I have at this casino right now. We're supposed to be building the sports book, but everything's so far delayed, there's no time. They're going to repurpose their other sports books. So we're going to take some of these other ingredients from the refrigerator and we're going to shove them over here. And but I'm sure that in the end, we're able to bring that solution to them where in a short period of time, because we understand all the components that are going in. But again, this is more of what we're seeing, which is I have a project, I have a room, I need to get it up and going. I'm going to steal components. Can you make this work for me?
So no, I think Mark brings up a really good point, and I like the analogy too. It honestly, what you're saying is where we've really earned our chops for a long time. So to me, that means is there a different way of architecting code to be able to accomplish that? Do we have to set up our systems with a little bit more flexibility? Is there, what are some things that we could talk to people about that let them know that we want to give you something that we know that you're going to be able to put together quickly and make work without having to kind of operate again or have to reinvent the wheel, let's say.
I think Mark brings up a great point that, we probably don't pay enough attention to if you are in the design build side of things, which is that there's a lot of existing kind of secondary market product or existing product that still functions well. We just like the new stuff, right? So everything starts with, we want the new stuff. Now, would I necessarily want to program on a 12-year-old processor? No, I wouldn't want to. Could I still do it? And could I still get results? And Mark made me just pause for a minute. And I went, I could theoretically pull something up that off a shelf that's been sitting on the shelf for 15 years, and I could still make it work. And so there's value in, like we were talking about the software side of being able to say, like Mark was saying, I'm going to whip up dinner. Yeah, that side of steak's been in the freezer for about a year and a half, but it's still good. And here's some mac and cheese to go with it, and away we go. And there is a lot to be said from the skill set and the ability to go back to the skill set, right? Because we're constantly pushing new. Is it scalable? Is it flexible? Is it, we used to tell the stories of back in our day, and Mark will remember this, and Scott will remember. I mean, actually, all of you will remember. Back in our day, we used to keep these little tubes of chips in our bag, and after you wrote the program so many times, you put in a new chip, and you did. Quite literally, you put in a brand new computer chip on this thing. And theoretically, that thing could still work if you're in a jam. And I like that idea. It didn't really register until just a second ago, which is be willing to operating out of the box is not only trying to operate with what's new, but also trying to operate and retask what's old and upcycling it, I guess. And so I was, again, the sage speaks again.
Yeah, it comes down to the, how the code is built to begin with. If you're coding for specific devices, and that's what you're doing for a living, you're coding devices, well, you're going to be hurt by this quite a bit. And what you're going to be able what you're going to deliver ultimately is going to change depending on the end devices that you're trying to integrate. Everybody preaches scalability of code and being able to program systems as opposed to devices. And I think that's a key to this, is being able to swap out end devices without changing the code set and the feature set of what you're trying to deliver. So, when Mark goes from, when Chef gets lamb instead of beef.
That was a good one. I really like it. Lamb and beef don't really taste alike, but I'll let it ride for now. So what we want to be able to do is say, okay, listen, this sports book isn't ready. I want to repurpose this one. The first thing we do is look at that and say, what can we do in the repurposing code that we can still apply back to the new? You know what I mean? Let's make sure that we're having that discussion. And so we're kind of having two different discussions, which is where we see it going from a new software virtual standpoint, which is going to happen. We know that's going to happen. But it's not going to happen fast enough for the people that are in real jams right now because of the hardware delays. And they need to realize that when they get to that point from virtual, we'll be there. But right now, they need to see us as MacGyver. They need to see us to be able to come in there with our switch, our little Swiss Army knife and go, I can help you get through this period right now and build it in a way that it is forward thinking because we see what's coming as well. So I want to make sure we overlap those two things because the need is right there. I'm certain you all see it. The need is there to get certain rooms up and going now. They don't have time to wait for something new to pop along. And so if that means they need to go into the refrigerator and grab a bunch of stuff and I need to grab my MacGyver knife, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to do it together. That is how we address it from our side. It's day by day, and it changes constantly.
So I'll kind of chime in on that, because I think this is really a fantastic thought and something that is probably going to open up the mind of a lot of people. What Scott said earlier too, I think, is important to consider. And Rich, I'll let you comment on this. Maybe now is the time too to be looking at some more universal solutions that are not a brand specific product, and how, because as programmers, and especially those of us that are the principals of a firm, or this is your livelihood, it's tough to be dependent on one particular solution, and I think clients also, even though there's been a big push to investing in a platform, it can also be turn against you. So is it time for us to be opening up our mind to alternatives?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think we got spoiled. And Mark and Scott kind of suggested is that we all have preferences, right? We all have companies manufacturers that we like working with because we know the people, we get the support, we do enough work that they actually pick up our phone call, right? I mean, if you've got a choice of somebody who is going to listen and somebody who's going to wonder and kind of look at their sales order list first and go, oh, okay, do we pick up? They're checking their caller ID before you're coming in. And because it's been good days for control system programmers and control systems in general, you can kind of ride one pony and ride it out. I have always viewed that putting all of your expectations in one manufacturer is like trying to find a partner who does not only look at you. And that you have to be willing to know where loyalty is an interesting word in this industry. I think that manufacturers are much more willing to use it towards the participants of their dealers than potentially they will look at the people they're selling to. And so I think that as integrators or as control system programmers, you always got to keep your options open, because something could happen. I mean, companies could be bought, companies could be sold, companies could go under. I mean, there's lots of things that could happen, and we've seen it. Just most of us have weathered it over the time, but the time's kind of passed where newer companies haven't experienced some of that stuff. They haven't felt the sting of what happens when basically a manufacturer drops you or drops something that was your bread and butter. And for control system integrators, I mean, again, Scott has a software development team. Mark's got an incredible team that he's working with. You've got an incredible team. From the kind of ham and egger, carry your lunch pail control system programmer integration company out there, they're a little bit more at the mercy of what's available to them. They can't just pick up and grab a computer science engineer and say, okay, make us something. In the grand scheme, should your company be looking towards that? Yeah, but you got to make a living. And again, there's, we can always talk about this 30,000 foot view about what you should be doing. And again, we've got 100 and something years of experience sitting here in this 4 quadrant, right? We know that you should be doing that. We're telling you, we're saying, come on, man, do it. But at the same time, we forget, I know I do at times, what it was like to be new, to be starting, to be hungry, to be scrapping, to be waiting for that next project to come in to keep you going. And the hard part is riding that line between desperation and prognostication, right? And that's what this is about, is that this is a golden opportunity to be able to push yourself forward, because all of the things that are out there are pointing to it, and clients are going to be open to it, right? Like Mark said, right? The casino came up to him and said, this is all we got. So as a up-and-comer or somebody with experience or anything else, you now have the opportunity to say, we're your guys or gals, right? And it's tough. It's tough with us to be able to do as I say, not as I do. and a bunch of us are do as I do. Here's where we're at. But this is an opportunity if you feel your company is struggling to re-engage with clients and say, hey, you know what? X amount of companies have been saying it can't be done because we don't got the parts and we only develop for this and that. I'm your guy. Brought my Swiss Army knife. Here you go. Again, programmers don't like doing sales. Learn to do sales because this is an opportunity. You can go in. Literally, you can go door to door to places right now saying, hey, you got stuff? I know you want to do it. I know they're saying you can't get parts. We can have you up and running in a couple of days. How's it sound? And they go, oh, wow, great. Because everybody else told me 16 weeks. You're saying you can do it in a week? Awesome.
One of the things that Uncle Richie brought up, which is such truth in our business, and it's unfortunate, is programmers don't like to sell. Okay, and I may not be a popular thing to say out loud, but in the end, they're coders. They want to be able to work on the project, be challenged by the code that's going on. Sitting down and selling is not something that they're well known to do. One of the reasons that my company was different is I don't code, man. I don't know anything about it. I sell and I run the company. What that means is I get an opportunity to sit down with my customers, just like Richie was saying, go in, sit down, say, what can we do? But it's not just that. It's got to be, what can we do together for you? I want to help you. I'm not just trying to get an order out of you. Okay. I'm not just trying to do some job for this week. Let's work together, see what you have on your plate. Let's work the numbers. Okay. Because that's the other part of the problem here. You may have the capabilities that they need at this particular juncture, but not the budget. And we're a little bit more expensive than their in-house coder. So how do we approach that with them so that we can get them through this time together and show them what our capabilities are, so when we get to that next level, the trust is built and that loyalty that was washed out of our business is suddenly back on the mend. And it's going to be back on the mend because nothing creates loyalty like desperation, and we are a desperate business right now. And if we can admit that desperation to each other and to our customers and to their end users and say, what can we do together to work on this, not just from a product standpoint and a code standpoint, from a budget standpoint, from margins standpoint. Let's get each other through this together, genuinely get it through together. We're going to wake up in a year with new partners that are ready to take that next level step that we're promoting that is ultimately going to find its way there.
So I think also what you're saying too is that now is the probably better than ever for a programmer to be involved in conversations when it comes to designing or coming up with solutions, because that creativity is what's key, and being able to think outside of the normal approach is probably going to get the results.
For as long as I've been in it, I've been in it over 30 years, and I know that you guys have been in it almost as long, has never individually, collectively, company by company, embraced the truth that when things are bad, it's okay to admit that things are bad. They don't do it. They always put on a happy face. They always say, oh, no, we're fine, we're fine, we're fine. I know you're not going to get equipment for the next 6 months, but we're fine, we're fine, we're fine. That crap has to stop. And we have to be able to all look at each other and admit that this has been a difficult time. And we have to work together to figure our way out of it. And one of the components that is always overlooked until the end is what we provide from a services standpoint from the code, whether it's control or DSP. We're always, oh, by the way, I'm at the site, can you show up? Those days have got to be over. You need to reach out now. Even if you're not going to hire us, reach out, talk to us, find out what solutions we're working on. Let's get together on this and get our way out. We will get our way out. The question is, how are we going to do it? And if we do it together, it happens a lot faster. And I don't mean to sound all, hopey, changey, but you know what I mean. We got to work on this together and have some honest conversations with ourselves.
I think that's a great way for us to wrap that up. So that's very good advice, and quite honestly, it has to be. And I think this conversation was even more insightful than I was expecting, and I appreciate that. And I think it has a lot of good points for others to listen to from various perspectives. So please listen closely to it, because there's plenty of nuggets, and pass it on to others who may be able to benefit from it. With that said, I'd like to thank everyone for being a part of the show and providing such great input. Mark, Lavecchia from BMA Software Solutions. How can people get in touch with you and learn more about your
My
company?
website's bmasoftwaresolutions.com. You can find me on Twitter at @MarkLavecchia, but that's the best way. Otherwise, open that window and yell. We'll hear you. And it's football season, so I Sundays, as long as you don't call on Sunday, and Monday.
And it's football season,
and Thursday.
so you'll be.
And then during the playoffs on the weekend, and the other days are fine. Thanks for having me, buddy.
But the other days are perfectly fine. Absolutely. Rich, do you have any closing words or final thoughts? And also want to share how people can get in touch with you.
No, I mean, you called it. These guys have some great nuggets. I mean, Mark, again, Mark's been a friend for pretty much all of those 30 years that he's been in the industry. And I love it because I constantly learn. And thank you, because again, it's okay to learn. It's okay to, again, the California side of things, right? And Mark's still an LA boy partially. But it's okay to be vulnerable in this industry and work. And like Scott said, be okay, be easy to work with. It's in this industry, less ego, more support. We're a service industry. And I think it gets forgotten at times, because if you're good at what you do, you're good at what you do because you serve people. You serve the result. And there's lots of ways of saying it, right? But as a company, you should operate with a servant's heart. And if you can approach your business that way, even though what we do is technical, you'll wind up being around for 30 years, like all of us collectively have been, in our companies individually. And so, for newer companies, you gotta face your fear. You gotta face your fear, because the sales just don't come to you. And this is still the sales industry, whether you're doing technical stuff. And so recognize the sales opportunity in front of you right now. And you will see the benefits, 1 year, 2 years from now. And so again, like I said, I talk all the time. You don't need to find me. Find these guys, find you. If you do want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at @Artfragosa. You can find type my name into the interwebs, stuff pops up. Most importantly, though, as I always say, I'd much rather that you find me here on AVNation.tv, our full suite of shows, here with my partner, Steve. We've got Resi Week, AV Week, we've got technology manager shows. We've got social shows. That would be the best place, because hopefully you'll learn and whip something up for dinner when you got to figure out what's in your cabinets over there, and support our sponsors.
Yeah, we didn't talk about what drinks go with the food, but that's for another show. So Rich said it best. To find out more, visit avnation.tv, learn about all these shows and learn how to support the network. And also, by the time this posts, Infocom will be right in progress, around the corner, right after, something like that. Make sure you check out the coverage that AVNation is providing, and they will be there, and I will be there, and we will be seeing people in whatever fashion that is. For me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media, or my company Control Concepts at controlconcepts.net. Please also take a moment to share the show and leave us a comment, leave us a post. Let us know what you like and what you want to hear more of. Rich and I would very much appreciate that, so we can provide more of it. With that said, this has been A State of Control.